I don't usually check Craigslist first when I need to buy something, but sometimes you can find really good deals there. I was looking for new workout equipment, but buying weights and machines, brand new, can be very expensive. So, Craigslist felt like a good option to find used ones for less. After searching for a few days, I found a promising listing a set of weights for a great price, posted just a few hours before. The seller's name was Mary, so I emailed her, telling her I was really interested in the weight set and wanted to pick it up soon. She replied in just a few minutes, saying she'd be available that evening around 7 after work. Even though it was a bit late, I didn't mind since I wanted the weights quickly. I agreed, and she sent me her address. I looked up the address to see where it was and what the house looked like. It was only 20 minutes away, in a small neighborhood I knew because an old friend used to live nearby. The house was average-sized and looked pretty old, but nothing seemed weird or gave me a bad feeling. That evening, I drove over. The house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, so I parked near the mailbox and walked to the front door, which was already open. I didn't want to just walk in, so I knocked on the open door a few times to get someone's attention. After a moment, a man came down the hallway. I told him I was there to meet Mary about the workout equipment she had listed on Craigslist. He smiled and invited me inside, saying Mary would be down in a few minutes since she was changing out of her work clothes. I felt a bit uneasy, but the man seemed friendly and trustworthy, so I followed him into the living room. There, I saw the set of weights on the floor. But besides the weights, the room was completely empty, no furniture or decorations at all. I think the man noticed me looking around because he quickly said they were moving out, which is why they were selling the weights. I still felt a bit unsure, so I checked the weights and saw that some plates were missing. I asked if this was everything since I remembered more from the pictures. He smiled again and said Mary might know where the rest were, but then he just stood there, silently staring at me. Feeling really uneasy, I asked if he could go check on Mary and let her know I was there. He paused for a moment, then said okay and walked upstairs. By now, I was starting to wonder if Mary was even real, so I listened closely to see if he was actually talking to someone. After a few seconds of silence, I walked to the bottom of the stairs and looked up. The man was just standing at the top, staring at the wall, like he was pretending to wait, as if he'd actually gone to talk to someone. Panic set in as I realized everything was a lie, and I might be in real danger. I quickly headed for the front door, trying not to draw attention. But as soon as I turned around, I heard heavy footsteps coming down the stairs. The man yelled for me to wait, but I sprinted out the door and jumped into my car. As I drove away, I saw him run out the front door and around the side of the house, which made everything feel even stranger. After leaving the neighborhood, I pulled over and called the police, hoping they could figure out what was going on. I didn't know exactly what the man was planning, but I was sure it wasn't good. Later, officers came to my house, and I gave them more details. That's when they told me that no one had lived in that house for over a year, which gave me chills. I couldn't tell the police much, besides what the man looked like. All they had to work with were the weights he had left in the empty house, which might have fingerprints on them. It worries me that he could still be out there, trying to trick people into going into abandoned homes. But I'm thankful I got away before he could do whatever he had planned. I just finished college and needed a small place to live while I looked for a job. I was working part-time at a grocery store, but now that I graduated, I wanted to find a better job. Renting an apartment by myself was too costly, so I was mainly looking for a room to rent in someone else's house. I knew it might be a bit strange to live with someone else, but I didn't really have a choice. My old college roommates suggested I check Craigslist because many other websites didn't allow you to post single rooms for rent or made it hard to find them. Craigslist had a lot of choices, so I decided to try it. After a few days, I got frustrated because no one replied to my messages, and the few who did said the rooms were already taken. Then, on Saturday morning, I saw a new listing for a room. It was nearby, affordable, and looked nice. A man named Tom was renting out a big house with a spare bedroom that had its own bathroom and closet. It seemed perfect, so I emailed him to say I was interested and then went to work. I saw that the room listing was posted that morning, so I thought I was the first to contact Tom. During my lunch break, I checked my emails, and Tom replied, asking me to come see the room that afternoon. I knew I'd be tired after work, but I really wanted the place, so I agreed, and we set a time. After work, I drove there, which took about 10 minutes. The house looked really nice from the outside. It seemed like a regular home in a neighborhood. I parked on the side of the road and walked up to the door. I knocked lightly, but no one answered, so I knocked a bit harder after 30 seconds. A minute later, I pulled out my phone to text Tom, but just as I was about to send it, he opened the door and let me in. I noticed right away that he was sweating a lot, like he had just worked out, and he didn't smell very good. I didn't want to be rude, so I tried to ignore it. Tom showed me around the ground floor, pointing out the kitchen and living room. He mentioned that he didn't use those rooms much, so I wouldn't be in his way. But the rooms looked dirty, with old dishes piled up in the sink and stains on the couch. I didn't like how messy it was, especially since the pictures had made the house look clean. I remembered the living room had a brown leather couch in the photos, but the one there was black. I thought he must have used old pictures from before he sold the house. I felt annoyed by the dishonesty, but what really mattered was my room upstairs. Tom led me to the stairs and then stopped at the bottom, holding out his hand like he wanted me to go up first. As I started up the stairs, I felt strange and uncomfortable because Tom didn't follow me. He stayed at the bottom and smiled, saying my room would be the first one on the left. When I reached the top and stepped into the hallway, I heard a soft thud coming from behind the door to my room. I looked back at Tom, and his smile had vanished. He spoke in an annoyed tone, saying it was just one of his friends staying the night and that I shouldn't worry about it. Then he urged me to check out the room, saying I would like it. I felt really nervous and even scared. Why hadn't he mentioned someone else was there? I felt like I needed to leave right away. Trying to act confident, I walked down the stairs and told him the place wasn't going to work for me. He didn't like that answer and moved to block most of the stairs. I stood a couple of steps away and firmly said I needed to go. He asked me again to at least check out the bedroom, but I said I wasn't interested. He looked at me for a moment, and then, to my surprise, he smiled and stepped aside. I quickly walked past him and out the front door. I didn't know what was going on in that house, but something felt really wrong. I felt lucky to have left so easily. At one point, I thought I might have to push my way out. A few hours later, I checked Craigslist, and the listing had been removed. I still wonder who or what was in that room upstairs. For all I know, it could have been empty, but something tells me it was something much worse. I lived with my friend Nick in a small house when we were in college. We started out as roommates in the dorms, but decided to rent a house together because we both had good jobs. It was our first time renting, and we didn't know how to manage our money well. At first, everything was okay, but after a year, we realized the rent was costing us a lot. We thought about moving out or finding another roommate, and since we didn't want to leave, we started looking for someone to move in with us. We asked our friends if anyone wanted to live with us, but no one did. So, I posted on Facebook Marketplace, and Nick posted on Craigslist. It felt a little weird because we had never done that before, but we needed to try. After a few weeks, we got only a few replies, and none of them seemed serious. Then Nick got an email from someone named Sam, who saw his Craigslist post. Sam seemed friendly and tidy. He was a bit older than us and had just graduated. He visited the house the next day, liked it, agreed to split the rent, and moved in the next week. In the months after Sam moved in, he spent a lot of time with us, and we got to know him pretty well. But out of nowhere, he became really quiet and kept to himself. Nick and I barely saw him, and when we did, he didn't talk much. He mostly stayed in his room with the door closed, only coming out to eat or go to work. It didn't really bother me, but I thought it was a bit odd. Around the 4th month of Sam living with us, things started to get worse. One day, I came home from work, and as soon as I walked in, Nick quietly called my name from the living room. He told me Sam was home, so I should be quiet. Then Nick said he had noticed a strong smell coming from Sam's room earlier. I told him I hadn't noticed anything. Nick pointed down the hall towards Sam's room and suggested I quietly walk by to see if I could smell it too. So, I got up and quietly walked down the hall towards Sam's door. I didn't have to get very close to smell what Nick was talking about. It was terrible and gross. I had never smelled anything like that in the house before. Nick suggested we talk to Sam about it, and I agreed. We went to Sam's door, trying not to breathe too much, and knocked. We knocked again and called his name, but there was no answer. Nick was sure Sam was inside, but after a few more minutes, we gave up and decided to ask him the next day. It was getting late, so we made a quick dinner, watched TV in the living room, and then went to bed. The next day, I saw Sam as he was leaving the house, so I asked him about the smell from the night before. He said, "Oh, I was just taking out the trash," and then left in his car. That answer didn't really make sense to me, but I didn't want to push him too much. I told Nick what Sam said, and he thought it was strange too, but we didn't know what else to do, so we just let it go. A couple of weeks passed, and Sam still hardly talked to us, but the bad smell was gone. One night, I got home from work late, and both Nick and Sam were already asleep in their rooms. I went straight to my room and fell asleep. In the middle of the night, I woke up to some noise coming from downstairs where Sam's room was. I listened for a few minutes to see what he was doing, but eventually I fell back asleep. The next morning, Sam hurried out of the house to go to work, but he didn't come home that night. A few more days passed, and he still hadn't returned. I tried calling him several times, but his phone went straight to voicemail. We started to get worried and decided to check his room for any clues about what might be happening. Sam's room was very messy, and it looked like a lot of his things had been packed up and taken away. I found a pair of glasses in his drawer with some other random stuff, which was strange because Sam didn't wear glasses. He left behind some clothes and all his furniture, so it seemed like he hadn't just moved out suddenly. Nick called the police to report that Sam might be missing, and an officer came that night to investigate and ask us questions. We told him everything we knew and let him look around Sam's room. Nick also gave him a picture we had taken together when Sam first moved in. We didn't hear anything for a week, and then a different detective called us. He told us that the man in the photo with us was not Sam. A family member recognized him as their missing son, who had been gone for almost a year. This made the case much more complicated, and we couldn't help much because Sam had lied about everything. After a while, we lost contact, and stopped getting updates. The police said the man was just an ordinary guy living with his parents who had suddenly gone missing for no clear reason. Sam never returned to our house, and I'm unsure if he was ever found. It's the creepiest experience I've had, knowing that I was living in the same house as someone who had created a fake identity and was legally missing. It gives me chills every time I think about it. It's hard not to wonder if he was hiding from the police because of something he did or was still doing.